Hey guys, just before this episode starts, I wanted to clarify a couple of things. For one, this episode's a lot less like the previous two, as it's a lot less focused on jokes and more on discussion. So if you're not a fan of us just talking, then you may not like it as much as previous episodes. And one other thing is that my Discord server is open to the public, so anyone can join it. It's a fun time, so join if you want to. But for now, just sit back and relax and enjoy this new episode. So Riley.
Hello.
You want to learn how to become a villain?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
You want to know the best villains to ever exist?
Wait, best villains ever?
Yeah, the best villains ever.
You mean like the ones that we were just talking about off camera to start this recording?
Yes, exactly, Riley.
Right, let's do some
At Riley Review Hour.
At Riley Review Hour here in the podcast.
Hello, everybody. We're back again. This episode's being recorded a day after the previous entry. So if I don't know if there's going to be anything. There's not going to be any repeats of anything.
No, there's literally a different entire topic to what we're doing.
Speaking of entirely different, we have Riley here today.
Hello.
Riley Review Hour. Who
Hello.
Say what you do. What do you do?
I review movies, mostly superhero movies at the moment, but I don't know, I just like movies a lot, and every good movie has a pretty good villain along with it.
Man, what a nice transition into today's topic.
Yeah, so, I know, I'm really good at
me and Riley wanted to, we both like a good villain. Everyone likes a good villain.
We all like good villains.
Yeah, everyone does. So we just wanted to take the time to just talk about some of the best, some of the worst, and just have a fun time. So
yeah,
I wanted to start.
I want to start off with something. 12 years ago, the movie The Dark Knight released, starring Heath Ledger's take on the Joker, which I believe is a pretty good villain, probably one of the best villains to exist.
Okay, explain. I've not seen that movie.
So you haven't seen the movie?
Nope.
Okay, so basically, it's a pretty good take on the character. So you got this dynamic duo between the Batman and the Joker in this movie. And basically, the Joker's just like, ooh, I'm going to kill people if you don't reveal yourself to the identity, which Joker doesn't really care about. But in my opinion, this works because as it's a new take with basically the same sort of incident, like the same sort of characteristics as Joker in comics and that sort of stuff, but it has its own little twist on it and it still really works as a character. So you got like this dynamic duo, and then like Batman's just like, should I kill the Joker or should I steal to my number one rule of never killing anyone ever?
Because if he doesn't, then people will die, but he wouldn't have killed them.
Yeah, so. Exactly. But he still feels responsible for those kills.
Yeah. It's indirect. I mean, I wouldn't feel bad, but, you know.
Why wouldn't you feel bad?
Well, I mean, that's what makes a good villain. You don't feel bad about people dying.
Yeah,
most of the time.
Are psychopath.
Yeah. They're like Jake Paul. Remember when Shane Dawson called Jake Paul a psychopath?
Oh, yes. That was an interesting topic, and they didn't even diagnose him until
How many episodes were there? And they were all like 40 minutes long.
They were 8 episodes, around 40 minutes long each, and they didn't even diagnose him, even though they had a professional diagnoser person with him the entire time.
Okay, so before I want to talk about one of my first picks, I think it's good to set in stone what you would think a good villain, how you make a good villain. So, from what I noted down, most of the good things about a villain is the like viewer or player, if it's like a game, awareness of the character. So they shouldn't be like brought in right at the last minute. You should know about them for a good majority. Either
if a twist villain.
Yeah, either if that's through like knowing them as a protagonist and then they become an antagonist, or just knowing them as an antagonist the whole way through. I think that would That's usually a thing that would make one good. And then also, the villain is given a reason or a purpose as to what they're doing. Because if they're just doing it because they think, oh, this would be funny, then it's not a very good villain because they don't have any motives. Unless they're insane.
The Joker, he's just clinically insane.
I get that's his reason.
Goes, I'm gonna kill people. Funny. That's his thing.
His reason is just because he's insane. And then my last one is that they're intimidating, either in their appearance, abilities, or in their arsenal. So a villain could be like really weak, but if they've got like a really big if they've got a big arsenal of like tools or weapons or stuff, then you could still count them as like being intimidating.
Oh yeah, like a normal person, but he has like a ginormous crew of people.
Yeah, exactly. Which you'd probably like intimidating doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, I'm scared of them, but like just sort of in the way that you wouldn't want to like one-on-one you wouldn't want to be in the protagonist's position, essentially. You wouldn't, because So, okay, I want to talk about the first one on my list, which is GLaDOS from Portal, which is a game I really like. Have you played Portal, Riley?
No, I haven't played Portal. I think I played it. There was like at a pub once in the game room. I think I played it a bit there, but that's about it.
Yes, of course. So Portal's a very good game that I very much enjoy. So the villain is GLaDOS, but it's not initially apparent that she is the villain. Basically, you know the basic premise of Portal. You're in the test chambers. You're going through. And there's portals. That's the important part. While you're going through the chambers, you hear like kind of a voice, an announcement, like robotic voice, which is GLaDOS. That tells you.
I think I've heard of her. When I heard it, I was playing through it. Yeah.
Yeah, that she tells you what you do and stuff like that, like what you do, and sometimes she can be a little bit like sarcastic, poke fun at the player or whatever. But for the most part, it's pretty neutral.
Tame.
Yeah. So then, basically, the way the game works, if someone hasn't played it before, you wake up in a random room and. Eventually, you go through a couple of chambers until eventually you get this portal gun, which lets you shoot portals and stuff. And then you go through a bunch of, I think, 19 test chambers, and then at the end you have to fight GLaDOS. But what's interesting, or at least what I find interesting, is that, like I said, GLaDOS isn't initially apparent to be a villain, but what I think is more important is that initially she isn't even... It's not even necessarily that she's seen as an entity, like that she isn't seen as... It feels more like it's a pre-recorded, like a voice.
Like a broadcast.
Yeah, exactly. Until a certain part. So I think this is a spoiler, but it's a very old game, so if you haven't played it by now, which Riley technically hasn't, but you...
I don't care.
Yeah,
really.
So basically, throughout the game there's this... I think at some points there's this little poke that at the end you'll be rewarded cake, which is where that cake is alive meme came from.
Oh, yeah.
Once you finish the 19th test chamber, you get sent on this platform, and it's like you're drifting towards this wall, and then it shows an arrow to the left that you can't see around the corner, and it's pointing to cake. Then you turn the corner, and it's this giant fire pit, and GLaDOS is saying, like, thank you for participating in the Aperture Science test chamber program or whatever. And basically, it's basically meant to be just sort of building up to killing the tester, because I'm assuming the company doesn't want people like surviving after going through all of the test chambers, because like you probably wouldn't want to spread anything to the outside world or whatever. I'm not too sure, but when you progress through the game, what you're supposed to do is you actually escape the fiery pit. And then when you first escape it, GLaDOS's voice like gets really confused, and then she starts kind of glitching or whatever. And then you go through these like run down parts of the place that clearly that they're not like testing chambers or whatever. They're just random.
Not supposed to be there.
Yeah, they're random rooms. and throughout it, you can kind of hear Glados like trying to persuade you to come back, like the cake is there or something, or that party's starting back there or whatever, and you're just rebelling, you're just running away, and then eventually her voice gets like echoey, so you can only just about hear her, which is cool, because I like that, because it's like you're sort of just, you're leaving it behind, like, because throughout the entire game you can hear her voice, but then for it to suddenly go echoey and like far away, it's like makes you feel it's like
you won or something.
Yeah. So that's it's interesting because it, like I said, it changes your perception of the villain in a way that's like pretty interesting, because all of a sudden you go from thinking there's going to be cake to realizing that this robot isn't actually like pre-recorded, that it's actually can like, well, she is a robot, but that she can actually like communicate, and that she's not just a bunch of pre-recorded messages. And eventually you make it to her, and you see she's this giant robot, and I think attached to her is these like the machinery that basically makes her, that I think that, yeah, they build her personality. So there's like 4 different cores that all make her personality, and the boss is to incinerate all 4 of the cores. And as you do it, her personality changes. So one of the cores constrains her from filling rooms with poisonous gas. So basically one that constrains her like rage towards humans. So once you get rid of that one, you're on a time limit to kill the boss, because the neurotoxin's going to be released if you don't. And then
do you have the choice to go for which one first?
No, it's always the one that does that. But so it introduces a timed boss fight, which always makes it more stressful and intense. You get the 4 cores. I don't remember what each personality of the cores are, but I think one of them's like just recites cake recipes, which is pretty funny. So then you kill her, and then the credits roll, and it's a song called "Still Alive," which everyone that's played the game would know. Basically, it's Glados singing, and the thing of the song is that she's explaining how she's not dead and that she is still alive, because she's a robot and can't really ever die. Yeah.
We do what we must because we can. For the good of all of us, except the ones who are dead. But there's no sense crying over every mistake. You just keep on trying till you run out of cake. Then the science gets done and you make a neat gun for the people who are still alive.
Yeah.
So, do you have a second villain?
No. I want to so earlier in the thing, you said basically what makes a villain a good villain. So I want to do my part and explain.
That's cool.
Good villain.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at movie villains, which I mostly look at, it's got to challenge the main protagonist's beliefs and aspects of the character. Like, for example, if he has a moral code, he's going to have to go, should I break this moral code? This villain is probably the worst person I've ever fought. Sort of thing.
And that would probably happen less in games, because most protagonists in games remain pretty neutral, because it's kind of meant to be like, it's general enough so that the player can sympathize with the character, so most of them don't have very many moral codes. So yeah, that's definitely more of a movie thing than a game thing.
Oh yeah, and then you got also villains that are just have good dialogue, like have good moments, like if a villain has like some sort of build up into it, like say it's like a twist villain, like say he starts off good, but through the power of like, say he's like a police officer or something, and through corruption in like the police station or something, he slowly becomes into a villain. I think that's also a good take as well, because it builds up over time, and you just kind of see this rage inside of him.
Yeah. So, do you have another? That's
my 2 main things. Yeah, I have another villain who I think is just amazing. But I'm gonna have to look up his name because when you were talking,
he's clearly very memorable. He left a big impression on you.
He is very memorable, but it's I have to kind of Devin Weston from GTA 5. Basically, he's a very good villain. He starts off as not as a villain. He's a character that you unlock through the time, basically. Michael, who's the main character in the game, is like this old retired bank robber. So basically, he goes and talks to this guy because he's helping out one of the other main characters, Franklin, with like a bunch of like car dealership jobs. So what happens is he's just like, I don't need you, Michael, anymore, and just kind of gets Franklin to do all of this stuff. So throughout the game, like it's a side mission, you kind of have to choose there's 6 different vehicles that you want to kind of steal. Like you want to steal these vehicles, get them back, and then you'll get paid once you deliver them. But once you collect those 6 vehicles, you go on to like the drop station where you have to go and pay them. But the problem is he doesn't pay you. You just got scammed.
Ooh.
And you like get really pissed off, and then you do like a bunch of other missions and stuff like that. And towards the end, after you do this really like the biggest heist in the game, you earn like $16 million from it. Like it's crazy how much money you earn from it. But if you do it well, like $16 million, and then like after that, after you do the heist, the 3 main characters, Michael, Trevor, and Franklin, all get into a really big fight. And then Franklin goes back to his apartment, and he gets a call from Devin, right? And he's just like, I have a job for you. You have to kill Michael or Trevor, or you have to, or like you have a third option, which is the Death Wish option, where you have to go around killing a bunch of mob bosses that want to kill you.
Yeah.
And basically at the end, you got to kidnap him from his house and kind of take him to this cliff where you push him off at the end. And he's a really good villain. Like I said before, he challenges the characters and challenges Franklin to choose between Michael and Trevor or the third option. Most people choose the third option because you build up with Michael and Trevor. They're both really interesting characters.
Yeah.
You want to basically want these characters alive. And yeah, it's just a really good villain.
Yeah. That does sound pretty good. I wouldn't assume a GTA game to have an in-depth kind of characters like that. But
they have really good characters throughout the whole series.
Well then I'll do my second villain, which you'll definitely be way less familiar with, but I don't know. I may have told you about it at one point. Being Chaos from Sonic Adventure 1. So Chaos is this.
I know who Chaos is.
Yeah.
Wait, maybe I'm gonna Google search him real quickly.
Just do
Chaos Sonic.
Yeah. So, basically, Chaos is this water monster.
I've never heard of him.
Okay. Chaos is this water monster who, before the events of Sonic Adventure, has been sealed inside of the Master Emerald, which is basically just this
the
really...
Chaos Emerald. Wait.
No, it's not. It's different from the Chaos Emerald. So the Master Emerald is this big emerald that rests on Angel Island, which allows Angel Island to float in the sky. And Knuckles protects the Master Emerald. But Eggman or someone breaks the Master Emerald and spreads the pieces all over. And doing that releases Chaos from the Emerald. And basically Chaos is he's this water monster whose power is determined by the Chaos Emeralds. So he starts out pretty weak, like Sonic fights him and he goes down pretty quickly. But then in a cutscene soon after, Eggman gives him his first Chaos Emerald. Or I think, yeah, his first Chaos Emerald. And he grows a little bit. And then and then he gets 2 more, and then he's this way bigger creature that looks completely different. And then 6, he's really powerful, and it can only be hurt by freezing him and then hitting him. And then finally, Chaos 7, or Perfect Chaos, is this beast so giant that he's like towers over skyscrapers. And you have to fight him as Supersonic. And by the way, you have to fight him as Supersonic, but Chaos uses all the power from the Chaos Emeralds. But according to the game, Chaos absorbs the negative energy from the Chaos Emeralds to become Perfect Chaos, and Sonic uses the positive energy to become Supersonic. So that's how they get away with doing that.
Oh, okay.
So, throughout the game, Chaos is kind of with Eggman. He's doing he's just kind of following Eggman and following what he says. When he becomes Perfect Chaos, he actually rebels against him, and Eggman himself tries to stop him, but he gets taken down very quickly. And then Sonic fights him and then wins. And what's good about Chaos is that, and by the way, once Chaos used to be good, he was established as he used to be a good guy, and then once Sonic defeats Perfect Chaos, he actually goes back to being good.
Because he like drained all the negative energy.
Yeah, I guess.
Basically.
So what I find good about him is that, first of all, he's completely silent throughout the entire game. He doesn't say...
He doesn't have any dialogue.
He does not have any dialogue. And
does he have roars or screeches or anything like that?
I think when he's Perfect Chaos, he does, but I'm not sure if any other forms do. I can't really remember. But what I like about Chaos is that it's established very early on what his abilities are, and it's also made, in my opinion, kind of intimidating, the fact that that his power is only going to grow and grow with each Chaos Emerald that he's given. And the way Sonic Adventure works is that there are 6 characters, all with their own campaigns. So you'd go through Sonic's and then Tails and then Knuckles. And I think every character besides, I think, like 2 fights at least one form of Chaos. And certain characters get to see certain forms. Like, I think Knuckles is the only one who fights Chaos 2, for example. But I think it's just interesting because it's just this beast that you can kind of tell doesn't really have any morals or like emotions. He's just sort of like, he's just this creature that he destroys things when he's told to, and he ends up destroying an entire city that most of the game takes place in. He doesn't kill anyone. Luckily, the townsfolk have supersonic speed and escape the city before anything happens. But yeah, I just think it's a good villain for his ability to intimidate just through what his potential is, rather than anything he can like say or do. So yeah, that's my second villain.
Okay, so we've talked about good villains, but now I feel like we should talk about bad
let's
villains.
swap off the bad villains. What's your first bad villain?
My first bad villain is going to be Lex Luthor from the movie Batman vs. Superman.
Wow, an element of Batman vs. Superman that isn't good? Let's hear it, Riley.
Alright, so have you seen the movie? Yes.
No.
Okay, good.
I'm not really missing much, I imagine.
Keep it that way. So Lex Luthor is basically just as... Like, Lex Luthor in the comics is a pretty cool guy. He's a businessman, he is a super intelligent, and he just does a bunch of stuff to, like, fuck over Superman, even though he's just a normal person.
Yeah.
And then in this movie, he pisses in a jar and sends it to a judge.
That's not... Are you serious?
Yeah, then he blows up the courthouse.
That's really bad.
You know why he did that, though?
Why?
Superman was in the court and he wanted to blow up, and he wanted
Did he think that would work?
He wanted to make Superman look bad to the public. Which didn't work. It didn't work. Everyone, when he died, people are just like, "Oh no, Superman's dead." Boo-hoo.
What's the point of writing that in if it ends up bad for the villain to do it?
Exactly.
That's...
And then you've also got another scene where, Jolly Ranchers, right? They're like that American lolly sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he tries to force feed someone into a businessman that he's trying to make business with.
Right.
And the reason he blows up the courthouse as well, because you know what kryptonite is, right? It's like Superman's weakness. He wants some kryptonite so he can kill Superman. But once he acquires that kryptonite, he doesn't even use it when they first interact.
Wow. Is there more to how bad this villain is?
So in one scene, like he kidnaps what's it called? Superman's mum, right?
Yeah, Martha.
And when Martha, when he gets the pictures and shows Superman kneels onto his ground and I guess sadness. And you know what Lex does? He fucking grabs the pictures and makes them rain on Superman.
What? This sounds ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, but it's hilarious. It's so funny.
Ugh.
And then he makes this a Doomsday. He makes Doomsday, who is basically Superman but evil. He's super big, super strong, and he can pretty much destroy anyone he wants. And he makes Superman out of this other villain that was in the first movie, Man of Steel. And he puts him in this thing and genetically creates him through that.
Yeah.
But he also but in what I think he take I don't know, don't quote me on this, it might not be true, but he takes his shirt off and jumps in with it for some reason. And yeah, it's Jesse Eisenberg, you might not.
I've heard. I know, I recognize the name.
Yeah, Jesse Eisenberg plays Lex Luthor. And he was in another movie called The Social Network, which is really good. And he plays a Mark Zuckerberg in that movie. So that's basically my sort of opinion on Lex Luthor. He's not very good. He just does a bunch of stupid stuff.
Doesn't sound very good.
He's not good at all.
So, okay. Let me think of...
Villain?
Okay, I've got an iffy villain, which
okay sort of villain.
Yeah, he's not bad. It's just that he kind of yeah. So it would be Nightmare from Kirby's Adventure, which is a game that I have actually talked about at length before. Which you are aware of, Riley.
Yeah, of course I've watched it. I've watched the video.
Yes.
Your videos.
Yes. So Nightmare. Seen the video, he's I believe he's within the Star Rod, which is this source of everybody's dreams and dreamland, which is where Kirby lives. It's a Kirby game, by the way. I don't know if I established that. So basically the plot is that King Dedede splits the Star Rod into several pieces and gives them to his friends so that Kirby can't have the Star Rod. And he does this because he doesn't want Nightmare getting out, but this isn't made apparent to Kirby for whatever reason. And so then when Kirby retrieves the Star Rod pieces and puts it back in the fountain, Nightmare gets released and Kirby has to fight him. And what makes it iffy for me is, like I said, is that introducing a villain right at the end, I think can be a little iffy for narratives.
It can set up a sequel.
Yeah.
If it's right at the end.
The problem is that Nightmare is never seen in a Kirby game again after that game. So
do they even mention his name?
Probably.
They say, "Oh boy, Kirby, do you remember those crazy adventures with Nightmare?"
No, not really. Yeah, I don't think. I think one that does work a little better in the Kirby games is Dark Matter, which who is in 3 games, so that's definitely a better track record. But on Nightmare, it's just kind of his design is very nice. I really like the way he looks. He's intimidating. He's this big. He's he looks like a regular guy, kind of, but he's got this, like, cosmic cloak or whatever, and he's got...
I just searched him up. Yeah, he looks cool. He has a bit of a butt chin, but that's
yes,
about it.
Yeah. They did, I think it was in, like, a spin-off one time, so they do have a HD model of him. Yeah, I just think he's iffy because while he does fit the bill of being intimidating, and he does have a reason to be, the villain.
Scary big boy.
Yeah, he does have a reason.
Boy.
He does have a motive because he's trying to, destroy Popstar or whatever. I just think that the part about being aware of the villain is just kind of not really done too well. It's sort of like, at the end, it's like, they're like, DDD did this because he wanted to seal Nightmare away or whatever, and maybe just something that would have told you that Nightmare was a thing maybe would have helped. Not necessarily Kirby, so that he's still remained unaware, but at the end of the day, it's an NES game with very limited amounts of anything, so I don't really blame them for. So that also puts it a bit in like the iffy category, because it's not like they couldn't really do that much with it anyway. But there have been good NES villains before, like old school villains, but most of them return in games more than one game, so that's also one thing.
I've got a okay villain as well, like a iffy villain, and that is Kylo Ren. Now,
ooh, Star Wars.
Have you seen the new Star Wars movies? Because it's gonna be awkward. You haven't seen any of my villains. Great.
You haven't seen any of mine.
Yeah, because I don't play Nintendo games.
This Portal's not a Nintendo game.
I don't care. That's
mean.
Okay, so Kylo Ren. Obviously you haven't seen it, but I'm not going to try and explain it to everyone. not going to explain it too well because I'm pretty sure most of your viewers have seen Star Wars.
Yeah, I can imagine, probably.
Yeah, so you got Kylo Ren, who is interesting, but obviously he wants to continue Darth Vader's legacy.
Yeah.
He wants to that's a clear
even though he becomes good at the end. So
he becomes good at the end, so and I don't even know why he becomes good at the end. Rise of Skywalker is so bad that we don't know why the villain turns out being good in the end.
Wait, so as someone who, I'm not I'm not too familiar with Star Wars in general, so both of these trilogies establish a very intimidating villain. And
you got the prequels trilogy as well.
Those don't count because they're bad.
The third one's good. Shut up.
Okay. It establishes the villain, how intimidating they are. Then they establish the relationship they have with the protagonists or side characters, and then at the end they just become good. So they made the same. They made the same arc twice.
The sequel trilogy is literally the original trilogy. It copies the original trilogy, but 30 years later. Except maybe in The Last Jedi, they kind of build on Kylo Ren's character a lot more, and I like him in the Last Jedi, even though it's a mediocre film at best. But, so you kind of got his idea, Luke, I was training with Luke Skywalker, and then he saw bad in me and wanted to kill me, which is very dumb for Luke's character to go in that situation, because in the third movie, the Return of the Jedi, even though all the chaos that Darth Vader has done, everything bad that he's acquired in his life, Luke has seen the good in him. He's just I know that there is good in him, but he sees a tiny bit of bad in Kylo Ren, and he's just nope, you're dying today.
Because Obi-Wan did that with Darth Vader himself. Because with Anakin, he understood. The rest of the people were there's bad in him, but he believed in him. So it's kind of the opposite of that.
Obi-Wan is a good character in the prequels trilogy as well. I know we're not going to talk about heroes for a bit, but I'm going to lean into Anakin Skywalker sort of thing, because he's very similar to Kylo Ren with but kind of opposite, where he starts off as good and goes into bad.
Yeah.
They build up his character in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. I don't like Phantom Menace. That's a bad movie.
Yeah, no, I'm fairly confident that's a general consensus that that's not a very good film.
Yeah, exactly. But they build up his relationship, and especially in the third movie with like Obi-Wan and like they have a pretty strong relationship in the second movie, but in the third movie, that's when they like second and third. That's a really good. There's this one scene in the Battle of Heroes, which is the final scene. You know, like I have the high ground. You cannot.
Yeah,
defeat me.
that one.
Yeah, that scene at the end where he obviously defeats Anakin. He goes, I trust. He's like, I trusted you. You were supposed to defend. You were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them. And that sort of stuff. And that really, I feel like that really, as much as it is as a meme, like
it is.
It's a really good scene with emotional connection between the villain and the hero of the story.
Yeah.
And then you kind of see him in the original trilogy when they like first meet for the first time. Like Darth Vader just kills Obi-Wan instantly. He just loses completely to Darth Vader, even though there's like no emotional connection. To be fair, the prequels are made 30 years later after the original trilogy, but they could have done a bit more in the prequels to kind of understand why Obi-Wan. I'm pretty sure
Darth Vader wasn't even fully planned out like by the time the first Star Wars movie was made. Like I'm pretty sure George Lucas only came up with like, oh, he's Luke's father, like while making like probably like while starting to make the second one.
Exactly.
So a lot of his narratives aren't necessarily fully planned out from the beginning.
Yeah, but they still worked with him, and honestly, the Luke, I am your father scene is probably one of the biggest twists in cinema history ever.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't have anything that was too twisty before that. They weren't as big as like the movie Cooperation is right now.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of interesting to see that relationship build, and going on to Kylo Ren, there was basically no relationship built in the movie, which is why I'm putting it in the okay-ish section, because you understand why he's doing this, but at the same time, you need to build more of a character on him for him to work. I feel like we should end off with another good villain on either side, so go ahead, give your other good villain.
Okay, I've got multiple to pick, but I think I'll just pick one. I kind of have a necessity to talk about this one since he's in the thumbnail for the video that I've already drawn, and I kind of don't want to rework that. So, my final pick...
Is it Eggman?
Damn it. Yes, it's Eggman. So
we've had a bit of a talk about Eggman on Discord before.
Yes, Eggman is a very interesting villain. Eggman as a character, he's, first of all, it's important to recognize that Eggman is a Sonic the Hedgehog character, so inherently he's going to be a bit goofy. He's not necessarily going to be fully serious 100% of the time, but I think Eggman can be both intimidating and still like a comic relief at the same time, which I think is an interesting thing for a villain to do. Yeah. So main characteristics of Eggman that are pretty well established is that he's incredibly intelligent. I think he's got like a 300 IQ or something equivalent to that, and that he has an arsenal. He has many robots that he uses to try and take over the world or whatever he does per game. Mm-hmm. That's one thing, is that his motives are usually not that set in stone. That would probably not make him the best villain, but in most games where he's like expanded a little bit more, then it's done a bit better. So there are a lot of jokes. Like Eggman, he can unintentionally be very like a goofy character, but when he gets serious, and I think when I'm saying that, you can already imagine where I'm going to go to from here.
Yeah, you already told me about this. Haven't you?
So yes, in Sonic Adventure 2, Eggman throughout the game is pretty good as a villain. There's definitely less like jokes, like jabs at him. He's definitely more serious throughout the entire game. But there's this scene where I might do some visuals for this, but if like post, but I'll try and explain it the best I can anyway. So, it's established that Tails has given Sonic a fake Chaos Emerald, and the Chaos Emeralds are currently being used to power this giant laser that Eggman's going to use on the Earth. So Sonic is about to replace the Chaos Emerald with the fake one so that the laser can't actually work, but then Eggman interrupts the frequency on his walkie-talkie that he's using to talk to Tails to tell Sonic that he's got Amy held captive and that he better get to him quickly or whatever. And so Sonic goes there, and then so Sonic gets there, he walks into the room, Eggman's got Amy held at gunpoint, which is a pretty funny looking image, but it's not a real gun, so I guess it's fine. So Eggman tells him to hand over the emerald, and then Sonic, clearly not really taking him that seriously, he says a line. He says, I'll do my best Sonic impression. He goes, "You've turned into a big-time villain, Doctor." So he's kind of like jabbing at him like, he's doing something serious for once, or he's being real serious about this. He's about to give him the emerald, thinking, well, I've tricked him because this isn't a real emerald, and until a tube comes down and traps Sonic, and then Eggman says something like, "You really think you could trick me with a fake Chaos Emerald?" And then Tails says, "But how did you know it was a fake emerald?" And then Eggman says, "Because you just told me."
Yeah, exactly. Which is really cool.
It's really cool.
It's really smart for Eggman to do that. Like, I wouldn't have never thought of that. Like, I just would have gone, "Oh, look at this emerald. How nice of him is he?"
Yeah.
But Eggman outsmarted Sonic and just outsmarted everyone.
The thing is, Tails is also established as very smart. Like, he can make his own plane. He can, like I said, make a Chaos Emerald that is pretty much unrecognizable. There's barely any differences between that and a regular Chaos Emerald. But it establishes that Tails, at the end of the day, Tails is he's still a kid. He's like 8 years old. So the ability of Eggman being able to outsmart him in that way, I think, makes for a really cool moment. And I think that alone kind of solidifies Eggman as a pretty good villain.
Yeah, definitely.
There's not very much else to say about Eggman. Like, I like his design. I think he's drawn really well. I think originally he was going to be, they made concept art for him as the protagonist before they came up with the idea of Sonic. But when they made Sonic, they didn't want to ditch the Eggman design, so they actually used him as the villain instead. But
that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Eggman, and I think
What are your opinions on movie Eggman, like Sonic the Hedgehog movie Eggman?
That I think it's done very well because it's sort of a, I guess, transformation from the character, like from Eggman into this way more like he starts the movie as this like snarky kind of charismatic smart guy.
He starts off the movie as what's his actual name? It's like Dr. something.
Dr. Robotnik.
Dr. Robotnik. By the end, like the end credit scene, he becomes Eggman.
Yeah, that's what most people say is the thing, because that's that transition is very similar to what happened in the actual games, because he starts out at least in non-Japanese countries as Dr. Robotnik until I think Sonic Adventure, where the cast starts calling him Eggman, and then from then on he'd be called Eggman in every game. So, yeah. And what's interesting is that it kind of falls flat a little bit in the games, because the reason why Robotnik is a name for Eggman is because they wanted to make him sound more serious as a villain, whereas in Japanese he was always called Eggman. So some of his machinery had egg, like the egg name in front of it, which didn't really make much sense. And especially since it's a derogatory nickname by Sonic Adventure, he's still calling things like egg pawns or whatever, or the Eggmobile and stuff like that. But
That's hilarious.
So, in the movie, what's interesting is that Sonic calls him Eggman not because of his appearance, but because his like robots are sort of egg-shaped, and like most of the machinery he uses is kind of egg-shaped as well. And that character for Sonic to call things after certain traits they have is established earlier, because he calls the police officer he's with, I forgot his name, Tom. He calls him Donut Lord because he sees him eating donuts all the time.
Yeah.
Which, and it took me a while to realize that when actually watching the movie. Once I realized it, I was like, that actually does make sense. So Eggman's transformation in that movie is definitely very interesting, because seeing him take on the regular Eggman appearance was cool. And I think in the character's definitely not the same as the games. There are definitely differences. Like, he can be a lot more... I guess he's a lot more obnoxious in the movie. Not in a bad way, obnoxious necessarily. But, like, he'll, like, say something really loudly, or just really obnoxiously, really, and not something that Eggman would usually do. But I don't think that's really a problem, because as long as you can still tell what
that
role he's
Eggman.
playing. Yeah. So Eggman in general, I think, is a very interesting villain.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about my villain now, who was also played by Jim Carrey, and I'm going to be talking the Riddler.
Yeah.
So obviously, I've read Batman comics for a while now, and just I don't know why, but the Riddler has a special charm to it. So basically, you know how Batman's smart. He's pretty smart. He's the world's greatest detective.
Yeah.
Well, the Riddler is also really smart as well. He does a bunch of stuff that really shows that he's smart. He builds his own robot AI in the video games. He's really good at riddles. He can solve puzzles pretty much instantly and other stuff like that. And basically, I see him as like an opposing side to Batman, like sort of a person. He has a really large ego on him, so he's just like, I can do this. I'm way better than Batman. I'm way better than everybody. I'm the smartest person ever.
Yeah.
But when he actually gets defeated by Batman, he's just like, what? No, that's impossible. How could you have won? That sort of stuff. And convinces him of cheating and just being a bad sport in general.
So
and
just self-centered, essentially, very like vapid and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. He's very egotistical, and some people find that annoying, but you know, when I play through it and read comics, I'm just like, that's part of his character.
Yeah,
he's supposed to be annoying.
If a villain was like, if someone found something bad, well, not bad, or like annoying or like intimidating about a villain, that isn't a bad thing. If anything, that makes the villain better. Because if you find them annoying, then they're probably doing their job.
Exactly. Like, the main problem I have with the Riddler is people see him as super goofy and never really see the actual, like, detailed side. Like, there's this comic called Riddler Year of the Villain, where it's basically like an origin story. It sort of it's like haunting his past and like about his childhood. He had a very rough childhood. Like, when he was a kid, he got bullied at school a lot, and his parents hated him, and especially his dad. And one day he wanted to prove to his family that, you know, he's in the right. He's doing good stuff with himself. He answers like this puzzle thing where he's just basically like, I'm going to do a bunch of puzzles. I'm going to prove to the world that I'm good enough for this person. Like, I'm good enough for this family. They will understand me. But once he wins the puzzle, his dad accuses him of cheating and all that sort of stuff. He doesn't have any believe in his son that he actually managed to do this by himself.
That's interesting, yeah.
And then through that sort of stuff, he learns from his dad to take his anger out on other people and that sort of stuff, which leads him into becoming the Riddler, which works really well.
So just a question, what is the Riddler's usual, like, motive for everything he does? Is he kind of just, like, he wants
to embarrass Batman, basically. he wants to be prove to the world that he can defeat Batman. He's powerful enough, he's strong enough, he's just like, I want to show to the world that I'm physical enough to beat the Bat, which obviously he never does.
Yeah.
Sure, he comes close to it at times, but Batman ultimately wins most of the time.
So, sort of like he wants Batman to experience the way like he previously had felt.
Yeah, definitely. He just wants Batman to be humiliated. He wants Batman to basically go into a ball in the corner and just cry, basically, of how amazing the Riddler is compared to him.
Because I feel like I'm not an expert on DC movies, but I feel like most of the villains come from a place. They come from a human place, but then end up becoming these like monstrous characters.
Definitely. Yeah. The backstory of Joker is just a normal guy who falls into a pit of acid and he becomes this insane character. You got the story, Two-Face, the guy with two faces, right?
Yeah.
He basically is just a normal lawyer, or he sometimes runs for mayor as well. Like in some of the best stories, he runs for mayor. But then through his ways and he learns about corruption in society and stuff like that. And then after he gets burnt, half his face burnt off, he kind of goes into a split personality sort of decision where one side he's just like, oh, should I do this? But on the other side, he's just like, yeah, I should do this. That's my best Two-Face impression. I'm sorry.
So it's like the kind of angel and devil on your shoulder that's always illustrated.
Oh, yeah, it's the yin and yang sort of story.
Yeah.
And then you got stuff like Penguin. You know Penguin, right? He's like the short little guy. He sort of mirrors Bruce Wayne in a sort of way, but obviously his parents die and that sort of stuff. But instead of taking the good side of Bruce, the good side, he sort of becomes really bad and just evil and corrupt, and he does a bunch of arms deals and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think that ends it off then. So,
we've talked about good villains, we've talked about bad villains,
and even
we've talked about okay villains.
So, yeah, that was just a fun little thing. First one we've done. Here? First, we've learnt that the best villains
don't pee in bottles in someone's courtyards,
and don't appear at the last minute.
We've also learned good stuff about villains, like intimidating to the character and that sort of stuff,
subversion,
having backstories,
knowledge, stuff
power.
Like that. So I hope there's been a takeaway from this for people, for listeners and stuff,
and especially for people that want to make games or movies, because I
don't think a villain is usually overlooked, but sometimes when the ball is kind of dropped, you can kind of sense that they underestimated the power that a villain really has in any sort of narrative.
Definitely.
So, that about wraps it up. So this has been Wiley. He'll be linked in all those places.
Yeah. Give me a shout out. Give me a shout out.
So now that we've done all that, Riley, do you think you've got the power to become a real villain?
I feel like I have the power to become a real villain. First thing I'm gonna do is bottle some of my beers.